Lower back pain is a very common epidemic that is happening. 2 out of 3 people will experience some form of lower back pain in their life. So here is a progression of exercises that we can use to protect our lower back and to give our back more ability. The grandfather of all lower back exercises is the Jefferson Curl, because anytime in life and in training, whatever it may be, whenever I cannot maintain a perfectly neutral spine, I immediately round, right? So when I fail to maintain that straight spine like we're all told to maintain, I go into my Jefferson Curl. Okay, so however strong this exercise is for you will determine how protected you are from injury when you do go into that spinal flexion. So, and people always, debate with me, is spinal flexion good or bad? I don't debate. I look at the back and it bends, right? So whether or not you like it or not, so we can train this motion to get stronger over time, okay? So the second exercise that's of most importance is QL. It stands for Quadratus Lumborum. So back injuries don't typically occur on a perfectly straight line. They also happen when I bend to the side, or I reach for something, or I twist, right? I do a move, and boom, I get a back injury, right? So the Quadratus Lumborum connects our hips to the spine laterally, okay? So working out with a standing side bend or a side bend off a 45-degree back extension is going to allow us to lengthen that area, which gets chronically tight, and correct imbalances from side to side. Because from most of us, have an imbalance in our QL. We just can't see it because that it's a core muscle. It's so deep within our body that we don't even know we have an imbalance, right? And that's often due to years of twisting and turning one way and not the other. So especially if you're in a sport like tennis or baseball or anything rotational, that Quadratus Lumborum is typically tighter and weaker on one side and more open and strong on the other. All right, so once we develop that foundation of movements with the Jefferson Curl and then the Quadratus Lumborum, we can then directly train the lower back to resist motion. So notice how the Jefferson Curl and the QL produce motion. The seated good morning, as you'll see, does not actually flex the spine. We're actually trying to resist curvature of the spine in the deepest level of hip flexion. So if you look at this image here, my poorly drawn image, you can see that the femur is basically in a straight line with the torso. And the reason why that's important is because we can develop the glutes more than any other hinging exercise by simply bending at a deeper level, okay? And by developing the glutes more, we can protect the lower back to a higher degree. So the seated good morning is a very foundational exercise. It's third on the list, and most people I've seen, who I've trained this exercise for, they do not have the mobility to do this exercise, and that mobility comes from doing it. So seated good morning is number 3. Now number 4 is Romanian deadlift. This is the most common hinging exercise that I see in the gym, that on top of conventional deadlifts. The Romanian deadlift now trains the back and hips at a 90-degree angle relatively to the femur. So this is, the area that most people are exceptionally strong at because it is a very common exercise. But that 90-degree angle provides another layer of protection that the seated good morning does not offer. Then finally, we have the single leg back extension, which is kind of like the icing on the cake for all of this, because the seated good morning, as I said, trains that bottom position. The Romanian deadlift trains that middle position, and the single leg back extension trains that shortened position, where the hardest part of the movement is when my torso is completely straight. So training those 3 provide a very solid strength curve for your lower back to prevent any tweak. Now notice here that we're doing the back extension single-legged. So all these exercises are bilateral except for Quadratus Lumborum. But the single leg back extension I find is the best exercise to balance the posterior chain. Again, we have lots of imbalances from humans are just naturally asymmetrical, but we can kind of correct some of that by bringing in more single leg work. And I find the back extension is the best option because you're locked into the machine rather than balancing on one leg with a Romanian deadlift. I just think the single leg back extension is the best option, okay? But you can do whatever you want, honestly. So let's get some numbers in here. So anyone, I think, can reach 25% of body weight on the Jefferson curl. Okay, that would be like a beginner foundational assessment. Intermediate would be 50%. Okay, 50% is, you're definitely pushing it now. I think that's, if you're more serious about mobility, you can definitely reach that 50%. Now, if you want to have world-class strength, let's say you're a wrestler, or let's say you are someone who's in a sport that requires a high degree of mobility, 100% of body weight, okay? However, as you'll see, I like to keep all these exercises in balance with each other, and I'm about to show you the rest of the ratios. So Quadratus Lumborum, again, I think anyone can reach that 25%. Okay, that 25% should be not too hard, honestly, for 10 reps. Okay, then 33% would be intermediate level, and then finally 50% on the 45-degree back extension. For 5 reps, that is advanced, and that is elite rotational force production right there. Now, seated good morning. Seated good morning, again, I think anyone can reach 50% abs to bench seated good morning. I think intermediate would be around 75%, okay? And then 100% would be advanced, okay? Then for Romanian deadlift, anyone can reach 100%, I think. Unless, if you can walk, I think you can reach 100%, all right? And then 150% would be intermediate. Then 200% would be advanced, all right? Single leg back extension is the final piece, which would be, again, 50%, 75%, and 100%, okay? So those are the numbers, and generally do not recommend allowing your Jefferson curl to be, super strong, and then your seated good morning to be extremely weak, right? That means you have an imbalance between how much you can flex and extend, right? Generally speaking, how much you can extend versus how much you can flex should be balanced, right? The QLs should be balanced. And this is just a general guideline, but it's not something that's set in stone, right? So this is just a framework that I find works the best. And you can modify this if you want, but these are the 5 exercises. And because of these 5 exercises, I have actually healed chronic disc issues that I had myself, and have boosted my athleticism, have gained insane posterior chain mobility. And these are the exercises I recommend. And yeah, that's lower back training. And it's really interesting, lower back training is something that I never really heard of when I first started. But, and lower back pain is very common nowadays. It's one of the most common pains that exists, and it shouldn't be like that, Now, obviously, I'm not saying this is going to cure your lower back pain. There are other things we need to do to protect the lower back that don't involve training the lower back directly. And those 2 pieces are hip mobility and upper back mobility. But working these exercises is really key for protecting the lower back.